Every waiter avoided the rude millionaire, until one new girl faced him head-on. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from right now? Please drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to the main character. The restaurant was already tense before he even sat down. It was just past 7 in the evening, the peak of dinner service, when the man in the dark, tailored suit took his seat near the center of the dining room. The lighting was warm, the kind meant to soften faces and slow time, but nothing about him felt soft. His posture was rigid, his jaw was tight, his presence alone shifted the air. Within minutes, the whispers began. "That is him," someone muttered behind the bar. Servers glanced at one another, eyes darting, trays suddenly needing refilling, water pitchers suddenly empty. No one wanted that table. Everyone knew his reputation. A wealthy man, a difficult man, a customer known for sharp words, impossible standards, and zero patience. He tapped his fingers once against the table, slow, deliberate. The host pretended not to notice. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The man's eyes lifted, scanning the room. Not angry yet, just observant, calculating. He noticed how waiters adjusted their paths to avoid him, how one server turned around mid-step the moment their eyes met, how another suddenly remembered an order that did not exist. Interesting, he thought. Across the room, the manager whispered urgently to a senior waiter, who immediately shook his head. Another server followed. Same reaction. No one wanted the assignment. And that was when she walked out of the back hallway. Her name was Claire. It was her first week on the job. Her apron was still stiff from being new. Her shoes were clean, but already aching. She had not yet learned which customers were considered safe, and which ones everyone else avoided like an unspoken rule. She stopped near the service station, holding her order pad, watching the silent standoff unfold without fully understanding it. The manager leaned toward her, voice low and tense. "Do not take table 12, he warned. Just wait." Claire looked over. Table 12 was empty, except for the man sitting alone, hands folded now, gaze steady, waiting. Not yelling, not waving, just watching. Something about that bothered her. 10 more minutes passed. The room buzzed with conversation. Silverware clinked, glasses were refilled. Table 12 remained untouched. Claire swallowed. She needed this job. Rent was due in less than 2 weeks. Her savings were thin. Walking past a waiting customer felt wrong, even if everyone else had decided he was not worth the trouble. She took a breath and stepped forward. The manager reached for her arm, but she was already moving. When she approached the table, the man looked up slowly. His eyes were sharp, assessing her the way people in power often assessed others, waiting for weakness or fear. She met his gaze without flinching. "Good evening," Claire said calmly. "I am sorry for the wait. I will be taking care of you tonight." For the first time since he sat down, the man smiled. Not because she was polite, but because she was not afraid. The room seemed to hold its breath after Claire spoke. She stood there with her order pad resting lightly in her hand, shoulders relaxed, voice steady. No apology beyond what was reasonable, no forced smile, just calm professionalism. Around them, nearby tables had gone quiet, diners pretending not to stare while listening closely all the same. The man studied her for a long moment. Most people filled silence when they were nervous. She did not. "You took your time," he said at last. His voice was low, controlled, carrying just enough edge to test her. Claire nodded once. "Yes, sir. And you are right to expect better. What can I get started for you this evening?" Not a single excuse, not a single flinch. That surprised him. He leaned back slightly in his chair, fingers folding together. "Do you always speak so directly to customers?" "I speak clearly," Claire replied. "It helps avoid misunderstandings." A few feet away, the manager froze mid-step, watching the exchange with growing panic. This was exactly how people got fired on their first week. The man glanced briefly at the surrounding staff, noticing how everyone else had found something very important to do in the opposite direction. Then, his attention returned to Claire. "What if I misunderstand your tone as disrespect?" he asked. Claire met his eyes. "Then I would apologize for the misunderstanding, not for my intent." There it was. Not defiance, not submission, boundaries. He felt a flicker of something he had not felt in a long time. Interest. "Fine," he said. "Bring me a glass of water, no ice, and tell me what you recommend, not what is most expensive." Claire nodded. "I will be right back." As she turned away, the manager hurried toward her, whispering urgently, "What are you doing? That is not a regular customer." She stopped and looked at him. "He is still a customer." Before he could respond, she walked toward the service station, hands steady, heart pounding only once she was out of sight. At the table, the man watched her go. He had come here for a reason. For weeks he had heard reports about his newest investment: rising profits, high turnover, polite smiles masking quiet fear. On paper, everything looked perfect. In reality, he suspected something else entirely. So he had come in person, alone. No announcements, no titles. He wanted to see how people behaved when they believed power was seated in front of them. Most failed. Claire returned with the water and placed it gently on the table. "I recommend the grilled salmon," she said. "It is consistent and the kitchen does it well." "Consistent," he repeated. "Interesting choice of words." She shrugged lightly. "Consistency matters more than flash." He nodded once. "Then I will take your recommendation." As she wrote it down, he asked, "Is it always this busy?" "On weeknights, yes," Claire said. "People come here expecting a certain atmosphere. When it disappears, they notice." "And tonight?" he asked. She paused for just a second. "Tonight feels tense." He smiled again, this time more openly. "You notice things," he said. "It is part of the job," she replied. When she walked away again, the man sat quietly, observing the room with new eyes. He saw fear, avoidance, relief from those no longer responsible for him, and one young woman who had not treated him like a threat or a prize, just a person. For the first time that evening, he was no longer testing the restaurant. He was testing himself. Claire noticed the shift before anyone else did. It was subtle, almost invisible to the rest of the room, but she felt it the moment she returned to check on table 12. The man was no longer scanning the restaurant like a judge in a courtroom. He was listening, watching, absorbing details most customers ignored. "How is everything so far?" she asked, setting the plate down carefully. He looked at the dish, then back at her. "You were right," he said. "It is consistent." She allowed herself a small smile. "I am glad." He picked up his fork, but did not eat right away. "Tell me something," he said. "How long have you worked here?" "A few weeks," Claire replied honestly. "And you already speak like you have been here for years." She shrugged again, that same calm, grounded gesture. "I've worked in restaurants before. People are usually the same, even when the menus change." "Meaning?" he asked. "Most people just want to be treated fairly," she said, "on both sides of the table." His fork paused midair. Fairly. It was not a word he heard often directed at him. He watched her move away to another table. The way she listened more than she talked. The way she knelt slightly to meet an elderly woman's eye level. The way she corrected an order without blame or drama. There was no performance in it, just quiet competence. At the service station, the tension had not eased. "Are you trying to get fired?" one of the senior servers whispered as Claire passed. Claire shook her head. "I am trying to do my job." "That man is trouble," another muttered. "People like him do not forget." Claire did not respond. She had already returned to the table. The man noticed the look she received, the whispered warnings, the invisible line she had crossed simply by not being afraid. "So," he said as she refilled his water, "what do you plan to do with this job?" She hesitated, surprised by the question. "I plan to keep it," she said, "if I do it well." "And after that?" She considered him carefully. "After that, I would like to move into management someday. Not here necessarily, just somewhere that values people." He raised an eyebrow. "Values people more than profit?" "I think the two are connected," Claire said. "People work better when they are not scared." That did it. For a moment, the man forgot his role entirely, forgot the reason he was here. He saw not an employee, but a mirror held up to a system he had helped build. Fear disguised as efficiency. He had tested dozens of locations like this before. He had seen rudeness, greed, indifference. He had expected more of the same. He had not expected her. When Claire returned with the check, she placed it on the table and waited, as trained. No hovering, no rushing. "You did not treat me differently when you thought I was just another difficult customer," he said. She met his gaze evenly. "I treated you the same way I treat everyone else." He smiled, slower this time. "That is rare." As he stood to leave, the manager rushed over, apologizing profusely, voice shaking. The man waved him off with a single raised hand. "Everything was fine," he said. The manager froze, confused. The man turned back to Claire. "Thank you for your honesty tonight." "You are welcome," she replied. He left the restaurant without another word, but the weight he left behind was heavier than before. Claire did not know it yet, but the test was far from over. In fact, she had just passed the first part without even realizing she was being tested at all. The next afternoon, the restaurant felt different to Claire. Nothing obvious had changed. The same soft music played, the same polished floors reflected the afternoon light. But there was a low, restless energy among the staff, the kind that came from a story already spreading. "He paid in cash," one server whispered, "left a generous tip." "That does not mean anything," another replied. "Men like that come back." Claire said nothing. She focused on her section, moving table to table, doing exactly what she had done the night before. She refused to replay the conversation in her head, refused to wonder if she had crossed a line. Just after 1:30 in the afternoon, the door opened again. Claire did not see him at first. She was refilling a coffee when the room shifted in the same quiet way it had the night before. Conversations dipped. Chairs scraped slightly. Someone near the host stand inhaled sharply. He was back. Same tailored suit, same controlled posture. This time he chose a smaller table near the window, one that did not command attention. He sat down without looking around, as if the decision had already been made. The host glanced toward the manager, who shook his head quickly. No one moved. Claire noticed the hesitation and felt a familiar tightening in her chest. She set the coffee pot down and looked toward the window. He met her eyes, not with expectation, with recognition. She walked over. "Good afternoon," she said. "Welcome back." "You remembered me," he said. "You were here last night," Claire replied. "I remember all my tables." "That is not usually true," he said. She smiled faintly. "It is for me." He studied her again, but this time there was no edge to it, no test in his tone. Just curiosity layered over something more deliberate. "I would like lunch," he said, "but I am not in a hurry today." "Then you picked the right time," Claire replied. "What can I get started for you?" As she took his order, he changed it twice, not rudely, casually, watching to see if irritation would slip through. It did not. When the food arrived, he waited before touching it. "Do you know why I came back?" he asked. Claire shook her head. "I do not. I wanted to see if last night was an act," he said, "or if that is who you are." Her hands stilled on the table for a moment. "I am not sure how to perform at work," she said. "I only know how to be professional." "Professional," he repeated. That word again. She met his gaze. "It matters." Across the room, the manager watched closely, every muscle tense. He expected a complaint, a scene, something that would justify the fear. None came. Instead, the man asked Claire about the neighborhood, about how long she planned to stay in the city, about what made a place feel fair to work in. She answered honestly but carefully. She did not complain. She did not flatter. She spoke the way she always did, grounded and direct. When he finished eating, he did something unexpected. He left the check face down on the table. "You can pick that up when you have time," he said. Claire nodded and stepped away. He watched her again as she moved through the room, helping a family with a stroller, calming a frustrated guest, smiling once without forcing it. No fear, no special treatment. That was the moment the test shifted. This was no longer about customer service. This was about character. When Claire finally returned to the table, the man stood and pushed his chair in himself. "Thank you," he said, "for being consistent." "You are welcome," she replied. He walked out without revealing anything. But as the door closed behind him, Claire felt it, the quiet certainty that something had been set in motion. And this time, she knew it had nothing to do with the food. The third visit came without warning. It was a quiet weekday evening, slower than usual, when Claire noticed the man again. This time, he did not wear the tailored suit. His jacket was simple. His watch was hidden beneath his sleeve. If someone did not know him, they would not look twice. But Claire knew. She felt it before she saw him clearly. That same presence, that same calm weight in the room. He took a seat near the back, not table 12, not the window. Somewhere ordinary, somewhere easy to overlook. The host did not recognize him. The manager did not tense. Only Claire paused. She walked over, holding 2 menus instead of 1, just in case. "Good evening," she said. "Table for 1?" "For now," he replied. She smiled politely and handed him a menu. "Let me know when you are ready." As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "Claire." She stopped. "Yes?" "You remembered my name," he said. She nodded. "You remembered mine first." That earned a quiet laugh from him. The sound surprised both of them. Tonight, he watched her more closely than before. Not as a customer, not as a test, as someone trying to understand. He noticed how she handled a complaint at the next table without raising her voice. How she apologized for a mistake she did not make because it would calm the situation faster. How she thanked the kitchen when a dish came out right, even though they never heard her. When she returned to take his order, he did not change it. He did not challenge her. "I want to ask you something," he said. Claire nodded. "You can ask." "Why did you take my table the first night?" he asked. "Everyone else avoided it." She thought for a moment before answering. "Because it was empty," she said, "and because it was not fair to leave someone waiting just because they are difficult. Even if it costs you your job?" "Especially then," Claire replied. "If I lose a job for doing it right, then it was not the right place for me anyway." The words landed quietly, but firmly. He looked at her for a long time. "You know," he said slowly, "most people change the moment they believe money is involved." And she met his gaze. "Money changes situations," she said. "It does not have to change character." That was it. The test ended right there. Not because she had passed every challenge, but because she had never known she was being tested at all. Later that night, after he left, the manager pulled Claire aside. "There was a call this afternoon," he said, uneasy. "From corporate." Claire frowned. "About what?" "They asked questions," he said. "About staff behavior, about customer experience, about you." Her stomach tightened. "Am I in trouble?" "I do not know," he admitted. "But I have never heard corporate ask about a single server before." Claire nodded slowly and returned to her work, though her thoughts refused to settle. Across town, the man sat alone in his office, jacket folded neatly over the chair. He stared out at the city lights, thinking of a restaurant that looked profitable on paper and fragile in practice, and of one woman who had stood her ground without knowing who stood in front of her. He reached for his phone and made a call. "Schedule a meeting tomorrow morning," he said. "I want a full report on the downtown location." He paused, then added, "And include the new hire, Claire." The next day would change everything. Claire just did not know it yet. The meeting invitation arrived the next morning. Claire read the message twice, then a third time, just to be sure she had not misunderstood it. A request from corporate. Attendance required. Her name listed clearly at the bottom. She felt her pulse quicken. In the short time she had worked at the restaurant, corporate was a distant word, something discussed only in whispers after closing. Audits, inspections, quiet firings, sudden changes. She arrived early, dressed neatly, hands folded in her lap as she waited in the conference room at the regional office. The space was modern and cold. Glass walls, long polished table, screens mounted silently on every side. One by one, managers from several locations filed in. Her manager barely looked at her, his face tight with uncertainty. Then the door opened. The man from the restaurant stepped inside. This time, there was no disguise. He wore a tailored suit that fit him perfectly. His presence filled the room without effort. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Chairs shifted. Someone stood too quickly. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. She recognized him instantly. The posture, the calm, the eyes that observed without rushing. But now there was something else. Respect. The room came to attention as he took his seat at the head of the table. "Good morning," he said evenly. "Thank you all for being here on short notice." No one spoke. "I am Daniel Wright," he continued, "founder and chief executive officer of Wright Hospitality Group." Claire's hands tightened together beneath the table. This could not be real. Daniel glanced around the room. Then his gaze landed on her. Just for a moment, not sharp, not testing, almost reassuring. "This meeting is about standards," he said. "Not numbers, not margins, standards." The manager shifted uncomfortably. "I visited several locations recently," Daniel continued, "unannounced, alone. I wanted to see how our people behave when they believe no one important is watching." A pause. "What I saw was fear," he said. "Avoidance. Systems built to protect management, not people." No one argued. Then he turned toward Claire. "And I saw one employee do something different." Every head turned. Claire felt heat rush to her face. "Sir," she began, standing instinctively, "if I did something wrong, I am happy to explain." Daniel raised a hand gently. "You did nothing wrong," he said. "You did something rare." He looked back to the room. "Claire treated me the same way she treated every customer. With clarity, with respect, without fear, without flattery." Her manager stared at her, stunned. Daniel continued, his voice steady. "She did not know who I was. She did not know she was being observed. That is the point." Claire swallowed. "I did not reveal myself that night," Daniel said, "or the next, or the one after that. Because character does not reveal itself in one moment. It reveals itself in consistency." He stood. "As of today," he said, "we are implementing changes across all locations, training, leadership accountability, and a revised reporting structure." Then he turned back to Claire. "And Claire," he said, "I would like you to join a pilot leadership program effective immediately." The room erupted in murmurs. Her manager opened his mouth, then closed it again. Claire stood slowly, heart pounding. "Sir, I am just a server," she said quietly. Daniel smiled. "That is exactly why," he replied. The weight of the moment settled over her. The man she had stood up to was not just a difficult customer. He was the man who owned everything. And he had been watching her all along. The days that followed the meeting were harder than Claire expected. The promotion did not come with applause in the restaurant. It came with silence. When she returned to work, conversations stopped when she entered the room. Some coworkers smiled too brightly. Others avoided her altogether. The easy camaraderie she had felt during her first weeks was gone, replaced by something brittle and uncertain. "You are corporate now," one server joked, but the humor did not reach her eyes. Claire tried to brush it off. She focused on learning, on listening, on proving that the opportunity she had been given was not a mistake. But doubt followed her home at night, settling in when the apartment grew quiet. Had she earned this, or had she simply been in the right place at the right time? At the same time, the pressure from above intensified. The pilot leadership program moved fast. Meetings, evaluations, long conversations about culture, accountability, and fear-based management. Words that sounded noble, but felt heavy when she realized she was now expected to represent them. One afternoon, Daniel asked her to walk with him through another location. No disguise this time, no testing, just observation. As they moved through the dining room, Claire noticed things she had once ignored. A server flinching at a raised voice. A supervisor correcting someone publicly instead of privately. The same tension she had felt on her first night. "This is what I meant," Daniel said quietly. "People perform worse when they are afraid." Claire nodded, but her chest felt tight. "They also resent change," she said, "especially when it comes from someone they think did not earn it." Daniel looked at her. "Do you believe that?" She hesitated. "Some days." That night, the resentment became impossible to ignore. Her former manager cornered her after closing, his voice low and controlled. "You made us all look bad," he said. "You could have kept your head down." Claire met his gaze. "I did my job." "You did more than that," he replied, "and now we all pay for it." The words followed her home. For the first time since the meeting, Claire wondered if staying quiet would have been easier, if standing up had been worth the cost. She sat on the edge of her bed, replaying every decision, every word she had spoken to Daniel when she thought he was just another customer. Across the city, Daniel faced his own resistance. Executives pushed back against the changes. Numbers mattered, they argued. Speed mattered. Fear kept people sharp. Daniel listened, then disagreed. "She did not outperform because she was afraid," he said. "She outperformed because she was secure." Later that evening, he called Claire. "I know this part is uncomfortable," he said. "Growth usually is." "I do not want special treatment," she replied. "You are not receiving it," Daniel said. "You are receiving responsibility." There was a pause. "You stood up when it was easier to stay silent," he continued. "That does not stop being difficult just because people know your name now." Claire took a breath. "I just want to do this right," she said. Daniel smiled on the other end of the line. "That is why you will." The storm had not passed, but neither of them was backing down. And for the first time, Claire understood that courage did not end at the reveal. That was where it truly began. Change did not happen all at once. It came in small, uncomfortable shifts that forced everyone to pay attention. Claire's new role placed her between two worlds. She was no longer just a server, but she was not yet management in the eyes of the staff. She listened more than she spoke, standing in corners during meetings, walking the floor during peak hours, watching how people reacted when no one thought they were being evaluated. She took notes, quiet ones. Patterns emerged quickly. The same supervisors raised their voices. The same employees went silent. The same mistakes repeated, not because people were careless, but because they were afraid to ask questions. Claire brought her observations to Daniel during their weekly check-in. "They are not lazy," she said. "They are guarded." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Fear is expensive," he replied. "It costs more than most companies realize." Together, they began making changes that did not look dramatic from the outside, but felt seismic on the inside. Private corrections instead of public scoldings. Clear expectations instead of shifting rules. A system where feedback could travel upward without punishment. Not everyone welcomed it. One location manager resigned within a week. Another pushed back openly, accusing Claire of favoritism and Daniel of losing control. Daniel did not waver. "She is not here to be liked," he said in a meeting. "She is here to make this better." Claire felt the weight of that sentence settle into her bones. Late one evening, after a long day of site visits, they sat across from each other in a quiet restaurant that was not part of the company. No staff recognizing them, no tension, just two people sharing a meal. "You could have chosen someone with a degree," Claire said finally. "Someone who looks the part." Daniel smiled slightly. "I have met many people who look the part, very few who live it." She looked down at her hands. "Some days I still feel like I am pretending." "So did I," he said. "For years." She looked up, surprised. "Being decisive does not mean being certain," Daniel continued. "It means moving forward anyway." In that moment, something shifted between them. Not romance, not yet. Something quieter. Mutual respect, deepening into trust. The results began to show. Turnover slowed. Customer feedback improved. One server approached Claire after a shift, voice shaking, and thanked her for listening. "I almost quit last month," the woman admitted. "Now I do not feel invisible." That night, Claire sat alone in her apartment, the city humming outside her window. She thought back to the first night, the empty table, the man everyone avoided. She had not planned to change anything. She had simply refused to shrink. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. "You did well today," it read. "They are responding to you." She stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "I am still learning," she typed. "So am I," came the response. The test that began in a restaurant had grown into something much larger, and both of them were no longer the same people who had walked into that room weeks before. The transformation became impossible to ignore. 3 months after the night Claire first walked up to an empty table, the downtown location looked the same on the outside. The same sign, the same hours posted on the door. But inside, the air had changed. People smiled without forcing it. Servers spoke up when something felt wrong. Managers listened instead of snapping back. Customers noticed the difference, even if they could not explain it. On a quiet afternoon, Claire stood near the service station, watching a new hire greet her first table. The young woman looked nervous, hands shaking slightly as she spoke. "You are doing fine," Claire said softly as she passed. "Just breathe." The woman smiled with relief. Across the room, Daniel watched the exchange. This time, he was not there to test anything. He had come to see the result. After the shift ended, Claire joined him near the window, the same spot where everything had started. Sunlight filtered through the glass, casting long shadows across the floor. "You changed this place," Daniel said. Claire shook her head. They did. I just stopped them from being scared. He looked at her with something warmer than approval. Pride. Respect. And what about you? He asked. What changed for you? She considered the question. I learned that standing up once is easy, she said. Standing up every day is the real work. Daniel nodded. That is leadership. Later that evening they sat together after closing, paperwork spread across the table between them. The work felt lighter now, shared. I want to make something official, Daniel said carefully. Not an announcement, a choice. Claire looked up. I would like you to lead the cultural training program company-wide, he continued. On your terms, with your voice. She felt the weight of the offer, not as pressure, but as trust. I will do it, she said, but only if we keep listening. He smiled. That was always the point. They stood to leave, turning off the lights one by one. At the door, Daniel hesitated. There is something else, he said. Claire waited. When I sat at that table, he continued, I thought I was measuring everyone else. What I did not expect was to be measured myself. She met his gaze. And I realized I did not like the man I was pretending to be. Silence settled between them, not awkward, not rushed. I am glad you did not treat me differently, he added, even after you knew. She smiled gently. I never saw a reason to. Outside, the city hummed as it always had. Cars passed, people hurried by, unaware of the small shift that had taken place inside one restaurant. Their connection grew slowly after that, not rushed, not dramatic. Built the same way trust had been built between them, through consistency, through honesty, through shared work. The arrogant millionaire no longer needed to test anyone. The new girl no longer needed to prove herself. What remained was something stronger than power, mutual respect, and a simple truth that echoed long after the doors closed for the night. Real leadership is not about being feared. It is about being worthy of trust.